No, I know you had said that.
Without stopping, and I felt something was happening, but it till it happened, so, and then they had to be careful with that, so, but other than that, it was great.
Is there any typos or anything in that report that you'll just send me one tomorrow? Good, good, I'm happy, that's what I said.
Because it's like, it's almost like you're changing your picture.
Yeah.
They got to get a little word out.
That's true.
See, my son-in-law is an orthopedic surgeon.
That says it, for example.
He had to pick a specialty of spines,
You're telling them this is.
because I think the economic decision is where the money is at, the spines, where they haven't really restricted the amount of reusing.
Footmark shall include, it doesn't say it's limited, but including some of
Like,
the
you know, the
organizations.
nervous system and everything else, it's much more problematic. and
Outside that, you get points for being local, being veteran, being something else, so that's.
And backs are typically not something you can fix easily.
We'll call it down, but generally it's not.
That's the big C that goes
You're afraid I'm gonna hit you?
Oh, you did?
Yeah, that gets incorporated, sure.
It shows weakness. You should just be able to command. You should be in the room with us. 7:29. Okay, 7:30. We'll get started. I want to welcome everyone tonight, and I hereby call to order this special planning board meeting on March 3rd of 2026. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I hereby announce that this meeting is being held in accordance with Chapter 231 of the Open Public Meeting Act. Proper notice of meeting dates has been given to the Morris County Newsfeed and the Morris County Daily Record and posted on the bulletin board in the Borough Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and quorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Notice to members on the planning board as a reminder, any use of electronic devices during this meeting shall be used solely for the purpose of borough business. Karen, roll call, please.
Mr. Wolf?
Here.
Mr. Malpier?
Here.
Mr. Bezel?
Here.
Mrs. Becker? Here. Mr. Cianciata?
Here.
Mr. Houston?
Present.
Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey? Here. And Mr. Gavaglia?
Present. Okay, tonight we'll start with comments from the public, and this is specifically for matters that are not on tonight's agenda. Come on.
Hello?
Hi, Lee.
Hello. Lee Connor, 2 Tower Hill Road. I understand that the borough's calculation obligations on our fourth round affordable housing obligations were challenged by Fair Share Housing and the state, along with that of many, many other towns, not just us. And I did get the ordinances tonight to try to understand how that had played out, but as a layperson, I really could not make heads or tails of it. So I just would like to request that at this meeting, we clearly state in plain language for those of us who are not planning experts, what is our obligation now? How many market rate units does that translate into, and where are they gonna go? That's my request for tonight.
Okay, I think Ms. Lane is gonna go through.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna go
Perfect.
through all that stuff.
we will, and I have
Perfect.
some,
Thank
I
you.
have,
Handout.
Yeah,
I love
why
it.
didn't-
Thank you.
here you go,
Thanks.
because I didn't bring a screen.
Anybody else from the public? Okay, I'll close this part of the agenda. One of the roles of the planning board, as a reminder, is the adoption, re-examine, and amendment of the borough master plan. Tonight's meeting, as the agenda states, is to review an amendment to the revised housing plan element and the fair share plan, the fair share plan of the master plan. Before we start, Karen, is everything in order related to noticing the state, county, and surrounding towns?
Yes, everything is in order.
Okay. Again, as our agenda stated, we have the amendment to the master plan, specifically for the revised housing plan element of fair share plan. And then we have the master plan consistency, which deals with two ordinances. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brewer to swear in Ms. Lane.
Sure, I'm just gonna give explanation. The public may understand this anyway, then we have meetings and you're up to date, but what today's special meeting is about is every municipality in the state of New Jersey has to comply with the obligation to provide affordable housing. And that's varied over the last 40 years. The most recent iteration is pursuant to the Fair Housing Act, the version of which everybody is working under was adopted by the New Jersey legislature about a year and a half ago, and it sets forth a process to have an initial number of what the affordable housing obligation would be, negotiation, kind of challenge it, reset it. And then once that settlement is reached, if it is, and Morris Plains decided to go through that process, like most of the municipalities in the state of New Jersey, once that's done, that has to be implemented. That is implemented by providing a reasonable opportunity for the affordable housing to be built. What does that mean? Providing zoning change in the places in which have been identified and agreed upon as potential places to have affordable housing. So those zoning ordinances have to be in place. They're the second part of today. All zoning ordinances have to be consistent with the master plan, which is why the first thing which is being considered by this board is an amendment to the master plan to change just the housing element, the fair share plan portion of the land use element to be consistent with the settlement that was reached. Then that will amend the master plan, and then, if the board so votes, and then to look at those ordinances, which do exactly what the master plan amendment did. So, yes, there's going to be testimony that's consistent, but that's what's being done tonight, and that's the order. And with that being said, I'd ask to swear in Ms. Laney, since this is a master plan amendment hearing, and then turn it over to her. Please state your name, spell your last.
Elizabeth Laney, L-E-H-E-N-Y.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give this evening before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please go over the proposed amendment to the master plan.
Okay, so you have before you, and everyone should have a copy of basically just a printout of a PowerPoint presentation, which hopefully I'll try to make it as clear as possible, because I know a lot of this stuff is clear as mud to even the people who are working with it every day. But page 2 has the municipal compliance deadlines in the amended Fair Housing Act. And I just show this to you just because some people weren't on the board when we adopted the housing plan in June. The Fair Housing Act in New Jersey, which had dated back to, I don't know, I guess the 70s or something, or 80s, was amended significantly in March of 2024. And one of the most significant changes was that they established in the actual state law dates by which everything had to get done. So in the past, it was like, okay, we're working on this, and when we get it done, we get it done, you know? And this time it was like, no, by January 31st, okay, and then you have until April 1st to do this, et cetera. So this page 2 basically outlines what's in the state law beginning in October 20th, 2024, which is when the Department of Community Affairs, as a state agency, published what every municipal obligation was. And this takes us to where we're almost at the end. At the end, March 15th, 2026, when a municipality has to sort of amend their housing plan and adopt ordinances in compliance with any settlement agreement. So I'm just gonna break this down on the next page, how this relates to Morris Plains. And so the question of what is our obligation is a very good question, and not as easy as we like to say. So in October of 2024, you know, as I said, DCA had to tell us, or they had to tell every municipality, what's your obligation? DCA said Morris Plains had an obligation of 137 units. The Fair Housing Act, as amended, said that's non-binding, that number. The municipality can review what they think their number is based on data that the state had. And then we had, between October 20th, 2024 and January 31st, 2025, to review that data, and the governing body adopted a resolution indicating what we thought our obligation was based on the data that the state had used. And we came up with an obligation of 106 units. And so why did it change, or what was different? There were things in the DCA data that you wouldn't have known if you didn't live in town, or if you weren't familiar with the town. So there were things like considered developable, you know, some of the open space properties that we have, or even like the, I guess, you know, the VFW.
There was a wooded lot behind the VFW.
Yeah, you know, just some things that when you start to really look down in the weeds, and of course the state can't look down in the weeds for every town, but once, you know, in a town, we do it town-wide, we were able to eliminate properties. So we said, now our obligation is 106 units. So we had to do that by January 31st. There was a month by which people could object, entities could object. So Fair Share Housing Center and the New Jersey Builders Association objected to everybody who lowered their number. Because obviously Fair Share Housing Center is a housing advocacy group. They want to build as much affordable housing as possible. And the New Jersey Builders Association is a building group, and they want to build as much as possible. So by March 1st, they had said, no, we object to your 106. We think it's 132. So we then, there was a court-like entity established in the amended Fair Housing Act called the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program, which people call the program. And it's made up of retired Mount Laurel, you know, affordable housing judges. And so myself, the mayor, I should have stepped back for a second. The mayor had created a affordable housing subcommittee that was chaired by Dave Schultz. And that was created before October 20th, 2024. I can't remember when it was.
January 2024.
Okay. And so I think it was Dave, the mayor, myself, and then Ed Buzek, who is the special attorney for affordable housing for Morris Plains, went through in front of the program judge. You know, we had argued back and forth with Fair Share Housing Center and New Jersey Builders Association. Well, luckily for us, I think the court agreed with us and said it is 106 units. And I have to say, having worked in other towns with vacant land adjustments, we never got our number. Meaning, you know, if they said it was here, we said it was here, we always got somewhere in between. So the fact that we actually got what we said, 106, is kind of remarkable. So, of course, we get that by April 1st or thereabouts, that it's 106. And if you go back to the first page, we had until June 30th, 2025 to adopt a housing plan. So I think amongst the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, we discussed, well, we don't want to have to build 106 affordable units. We don't have that much vacant land. We don't have that much developable land. And so something that is a leftover from the Council on Affordable Housing, COA, the old COA rules which used to govern affordable housing, and is something that it was carried forward in the amended Fair Housing Act, is what's called a vacant land adjustment. And you essentially do an inventory of all the vacant parcels in your municipality. And if this is, I will say, one of the, it's not hard, but it's a weird concept because it's really basically a numbers game and a math exercise. It makes no sense. And if you try to apply it to real world, you'll be annoyed because it doesn't really make sense. But we essentially, what you do when you have a vacant land adjustment, and if you turn to page 4, you wind up with two things. So you have your overall number of 106 units, which supported, we supported. You do a vacant land adjustment to say, we only have this much vacant land based on some formulas that are required by law. The vacant land can produce this many affordable units. That becomes your realistic development potential, your RDP. And that essentially becomes the number that you actually have to satisfy within this round of affordable housing. But I'm not even sure the law does this, but everybody now, the Fair Share Housing Center makes everybody address the difference between 106, RDP, and then the difference is what's called unmet need. And that's basically like, okay, we understand that you may not have developable land to do this, but you need to have, put incentives in place to create affordable housing. So most commonly, and we'll talk about this later tonight, those incentives are overlay zoning, which is essentially keeps the underlying zoning of certain parcels, but permits as an additional permitted use multifamily housing that has affordable housing as a component. Do these projects have to happen? No. You just have to put the zoning in place to create a realistic opportunity. So hopefully that's clear as day. No, so we had 106, and so when I came before this board in, I guess, June of 2025, or actually it was my colleague, to adopt the housing plan at that time. So we had the 106, the overall. We calculated a realistic development potential of 10. And so if you go to page 5, this list, and this is what I'm talking about, it's like an academic exercise that makes very little sense. These are parcels, you use, geographic information system, tax records, etc., things that come up as property tax 1, which means they're vacant. So these all showed up as vacant within all of Morris Plains tax rolls. You look at the acreage, you sum the acreage, and here, some of it is odd numbers, 0.4, 0.96, and then the law says that you have to assume that these parcels will be developed at a density of 6 dwelling units per acre. That's just, law says it starts at 6. I think there is reasoning behind it, but it doesn't matter. You start at 6. And so then, if you look, again, the math is a little weird. If you look in the column called maximum yield. So if you take the 0.4 acres and you multiply it by 6, you get 2.4 units. Typically I don't know what a 0.4 unit is, but it
One with
doesn't.
no windows.
But
You don't
yeah.
know that? Come on.
But it doesn't matter for this exercise. It sort of all gets totaled up, even though these are odd numbers. So if you see, we started at 6, there were a few properties that were in a residential area on Lindstrom. There was one Candlewood Drive, it's 100 Candlewood Drive, which is sort of to the west of Sonesta Suites. And then there's properties on Tabor Road that are actually owned by the borough. I always call them the DOT properties, which is because that's where they came from originally, but they are actually, it's the recycling center. On that large, parcel that, it extends beyond the recycling center for many acres, but 5.41 acres of that is deed restricted to affordable housing. So that is there's sort of 3 different areas. One was these residential properties, one was the Candlewood Drive, and then these borough-owned properties. So again, if you just look at this math, 8.26 acres times 6 dwelling units per acre, 49.6 units, which of course is ridiculous. You multiply that by 20%, and that is what is the affordable housing set aside. So, and we see this in applications sometimes, that properties have to, or developers have to provide on larger multifamily developments, 20% has to be affordable. So if you take 49.6 total units and you multiply by 20%, you get 10. So that's a very long-winded way of telling you that's how we got to 10, that our RDP was 10. So again, you have the 106, then we have the RDP of 10, and then we have an unmet need of 96. So how did we propose in the June 2025 plan to meet those 10 units? Well, okay, so this is on page 6. We had a surplus from the most recent round of affordable housing, the 3rd round, we have a 2-unit surplus. I'm gonna skip over the next one. Then we had our group home, which is a group home that's existed in Morris Plains for many years. They came before the zoning board within the last few years for an addition for 2 additional bedrooms. It's a group home, I think for developmentally disabled adults. That counts, there are 2 bedrooms, and each bedroom counts as an affordable housing credit. Then there is a property, it's on 44 Leamore Drive, I think. It's Bellwether Behavioral Health, and that is also a group home. For reasons that are probably more than you care to know, there are actually 6 bedrooms there, but we were capped out from using all 6 to meet the 10, because we needed to have a certain number of units that were for families. So out of the 6, we only used 1. So you can see these are 8 credits, and then the amended Fair Housing Act allows certain bonus credits, up to 25% of your obligation. So 25%, 10 is 2.25. And we were able to get a 1-for-1 bonus at the group homes, but you can see because of the 25% cap, we couldn't get more than 0.25 of credit at the 44 Leamore. Now the final project is, which is of the 2nd row, block 112, lot 2, 100 Candlewood Drive. So this was something that had been identified in the vacant land adjustment. It's a vacant 1.7 acre parcel located, it's privately owned, but it's located to the west of Sonesta Suites. It's owned in common ownership with that Sonesta Suites. And we proposed putting an overlay zone on that site. And of the 1.7 acres, we had calculated about a certain density that would, I'll just leave it for now. We're gonna use 3 units because it gets too complicated. So if you can see, we have the 8, we have the total bonus 2.25, we get 10.25. So we got the 10.25 to meet the RDP of 10. And on the following page is an aerial, it's page 7, of the property that we're talking about. That's it, and we thought, oh, that's actually not, maybe wouldn't be a bad place for multifamily, housing. It backs up on the borough-owned property, that is where the recycling center is, backs up on Sonesta Suites. It's not far from Route 10, which has, certain, obviously, transportation options, and it's also, across from, blanking, the condominium,
Foxwood.
Foxwoods, thank you, and Davenport Village, which is another multifamily. So, we had suggested or proposed in the housing element in June that we would zone, and it's an overlay zone. So the existing underlying zoning for this is C1, it's commercial. That zoning stays in place. We're just adding an overlay that would permit affordable housing. And we used a density that was consistent with the other, well, really with Davenport Village, which is, across the street. That would be 20 dwelling units per acre at 1.77 acres in size. That's 36 units. At 20% set aside, so 20% of 36 is 7 affordable units. So that would be 7 affordable units and 29 market rate units. Again, this is overlay zoning. This doesn't have a developer. This isn't an imminent application, but we are meeting our obligation by putting opportunities in place that we thought was a good spot. So turn to page 8. So on June 30th, it wasn't June 30th, but by that June 30th deadline, we submitted our housing plan that had been adopted by this board. We didn't have to think about any of this for 2 months, but objectors had until August 31st of 2025 to file any objections. We got one objection, and that was Fair Share Housing Center. Fair Share Housing Center objected to every town that sought a vacant land adjustment because they just, it goes against what their primary mission is, which is to produce as many affordable housing units as possible. What their main criticisms were twofold. One was that the density we used, the 6 dwelling units per acre, which we used across the board for the vacant land adjustment, it's the lowest minimum acreage, density, and they were kind of like, come on, you have to increase that. And then the second one, and so we kind of knew going in, obviously we were being very aggressive, you want to go in with the minimum you have to do, and then with the idea, if you get pushback, you get pushback. Then they also indicated, look, you need to provide additional overlay zones to satisfy the unmet need. And obviously, it's not the entire unmet need, it's about 25% of the unmet need. And they said, you need to put overlay zoning in place, in addition to the property I talked about at 100 Candlewood. So through the fall, and we had some mediation sessions that were attended by Ed Buzak, myself, the mayor, and Dave Schultz. We only had 2, I think, and they were very brief. But we were able to reach a mediation agreement by December 31st, 2025, which was the deadline to reach an agreement. So since that time, 2 things have happened which have been good, which is on February 2nd, the program issued a recommendation to the Mount Laurel judge saying, we recommend you approve this plan. We approve it, we like it, we recommend you approve it. And we got an order from the judge, the Mount Laurel judge, on February 24th saying, it's an order approving the plan. And so, in order to be in compliance with our mediation agreement, compliance with the program recommendation, and compliance with the judge's order, we have to amend our housing plan, and we have to provide for zoning, and then adopt zoning ordinances. So obviously, this body doesn't adopt zoning ordinances, but we do deal with master plan consistency. So we'll get to that in a second. But anyway, this all has to be done by March 15th, which is truly just an absolutely rapid pace to get all of this done, and which is why we're having a special meeting. Which is why you're here tonight. So, if you go on to page 9, these are the changes that we made to the vacant land adjustment. So we said to the judge, look, the properties on Lindstrom Road, they're residential, we think 6 dwelling units per acre is appropriate. We didn't get any pushback on that. 100 Candlewood Drive, we said, well, okay, we're putting overlay zoning in place that allows 20 dwelling units per acre. So in this sort of math exercise, we'll do that too. So we'll do the 20 dwelling units. And then for the borough-owned site, the 5.41 acres, we assigned 12 and a half dwelling units per acre, which I know sounds kind of weird, but it was consistent with Signature Place, which if everybody knows where that is on 250 Johnson Road, that is about the density of that. So again, this crazy math exercise, you get 99, using those densities, you multiply that by 20%, you get a realistic development potential of 20. So page 10 shows how we're now suggesting that we address those 20 units. So again, the third round surplus, 2 credits, the art group home, 2 bedrooms. Now, because our RDP has gone up, and this is where this just becomes a math game, is because the RDP went up, we could use more of the bedrooms at Leamore Drive. Because, like I said, there are 6 bedrooms there, but we were capped when we only have 10 unit RDP. Going up to 20, we were allowed to use 4 of the 6. And then, it's basically the same density at 100 Candlewood Drive that would generate those 7 affordable housing units and, what did I say before, 29 market rate. So then you have these bonus credits, and so that 15 units plus the 5 bonus gets us to the 20. So our plan hasn't actually changed all that much. The same sites, and actually the same densities, we were just able to kind of move some numbers around to get to the 20. Because we can also, as you can see, back in June, with the Leamore Drive property, we were only able to use 0.25 bonus credits, and because our RDP went up, then the 25% goes up, which means we can actually get even more bonuses from that project. So, addressing the unmet need, this is page 11. So, as I said, Fair Share sort of pushed back and said, you've got to do more. Because we had initially said, we're going to do 7 affordable units at 100 Candlewood. We're going to use 3 to reach the 10 RDP. The remaining 4 can go towards our unmet need. And they said, you got to do more. And so this kind of goes through how the numbers we came to. So the obligation, again, this is calculated by the borough, approved by the court, 106. The RDP, as is proposed, or as is agreed upon in the mediation agreement and reflected in the amended housing plan, 20 units based on the vacant land adjustment. So the unmet need is 106 minus 20 is 86. So Fair Share Housing Center, and it's in the amended Fair Housing Act. There was some debate as to what 25% of unmet need meant, but we conceded, okay, we will provide overlay zoning that will provide an opportunity for 25% of the 86, which is 22 units. Now again, we're addressing that 22 through 2 units, the other 2 units at Leamore Drive. I called it the REM group home here, but it's Leamore Drive. So now we've used all 6 bedrooms, and then overlay zonings at 2 other locations. And so you'll see on the following pages what those overlay zones are. So the first on page 12, it's block 101.01, lot 2.01. It's 300 Tabor Road. And again, this is an overlay, this is in the C1. And it actually had been a single-family residential zone until a year ago. And the new owner requested a zone change, and they wanted to go from a single-family residential to commercial. They had something in mind, which my understanding is it fell through. So one thing that the law requires is that you have to meet your unmet need, look for sites that are likely to redevelop over the coming round, over the next 10 years. So in our estimation, this fit the bill. You know, that we knew that they had come in, that they were looking to do something with this property. So again, this doesn't compel the owner to do it. They don't have to do it. They could, if they wanted to, I mean, I'm making stuff up. They could put a wall on, you know, they could do whatever they wanted within the current C1 zoning. But we're just giving them this opportunity to show to the court, we're providing this opportunity. So the size of the lot is about 2 acres. And the proposed density would be 10 dwelling units per acre. We could get about 4 units. So again, we have this 22 unit unmet need. I mean, the 25% of the 86, 22. 22 minus the 2 group home bedrooms at Leamore gets us to 20. Here, four more eating away at that 20. Now we have 16 left. So the other site where we're suggesting that an overlay zone be placed, or we're proposing an overlay zone be placed, is Block 114, Lot 2. And this is Sonesta Suites. And there, you know, we have no reason to believe that it won't continue to operate as a hotel, but I think there was some feelers out, you know, that potentially, maybe someday, it would be redeveloped. So this also kind of fit the bill of, you know, maybe likely to redevelop. So this is about 4 acres, but I just have to stress, there is no plan, nobody knows of any plans. But again, we're putting, and the hotel can continue to operate there as long as it wants to. This is in the OE office business zone. If the owner wanted to redevelop for any of the permitted uses in the OB office business, they're certainly permitted to do so. But we put an overlay, we're proposing to put an overlay that at 20 dwelling units per acre could yield 16 units. So again, as I said, there was the 22 minus the 2 additional beds from Leamore Drive, 4 from the, I've been calling it the teardrop property, but it's that sort of island property, and then 16 here. So this plan, and it's like I said, and it is like a math exercise. The program judge approved it, Fair Share Housing Center approved it, and now we've gotten the Mount Laurel judge to approve it and order us to amend our housing plan to reflect this, and to adopt zoning that would permit these overlays. So essentially, that's where,
Well, now that that's all cleared up.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you very much.
I know. So anyway, I'm happy to take any questions, believe me.
Liz, thanks for going through it.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
you've added as much simplicity
All right,
as
okay.
possible.
Okay.
It's complicated.
Okay.
If you don't mind, if I could just add
Yeah.
a few things, so. I don't like using the word, but it has,
Jason, you have to talk.
the word has been brought up, and it was voodoo math, right?
Yes.
And this is really what the state put upon us to work with. And I am very pleased at the outcome of this. When this started, we started with 137 units or 136 units, is what we were first assigned. So people were asking me, so you multiply that by 5, so it was 700 units, right, coming in, or whatever the number is, right? But that's what we just added here in Morris Plains. That was 25% of our population when we added the 700 units from the round 3. So it was important to me to fight this high-density housing. It's not the affordable housing that we're fighting, but you have to fight the affordable part because of the density that the state and the developers are requiring for one unit, they get to build $1 million units, right? So they're making tons of money when the burden, it then comes back to the borough, right? This has cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to you, the taxpayers, this unfunded state mandate. The time and the effort from our professionals, everybody, all the professionals here, this has gone on for almost 2 years, and just the support that they have given us throughout this process is really, truly amazing. Once this is done, in another week, when the council adopts these ordinances, we should be done for the next 10 years. These plans last for 10 years, so it'll give us time to breathe and maybe focus on some other things here in the borough, because this certainly, I can't stress how much time and energy this has taken from everybody. Some of these hearings with the judge in this fair share housing, literally 45 seconds, right? And that's what I got to talk, or Ed, our attorney, got to 45 seconds. It wasn't a hearing, it wasn't a negotiation, they were telling you what to do. So for coming up with the numbers and the plan that this committee has come up with, I couldn't be more proud of. I couldn't be more proud to stand up there for 45 seconds with that judge and fight our case for Morris Plains. And it's so important. We want the affordable, but we just don't want the density. I think when this started also, I was telling, just the towns that touch Morris Plains, the potential was for 9,000 units to be built, with affordable aspect, and then the 5 to 1. That's, these numbers are gonna be high. They're not gonna be as high as 9,000, but you see the congestion, you see all this stuff that's going on all around us, Route 10, the highways, everywhere you go, forget it, 202, it's that way everywhere, and it's because of the previous round that's finally coming up out of the ground and people are occupying. So people are really starting to pay attention now about the high density part aspect of this. But I couldn't be more proud of the committee that was put together. It's changed a couple times throughout the 2 years with some different members, but really just putting it all together and coming up with this plan was certainly a win for Morris Plains. And I just want to express my sincere thank you to everybody. And I hope that, this is a lot to take in and grasp, because even being on that committee, you still get these numbers confused and where things are going and why you're doing it like this and why it has to be over here. And to get it all into a nutshell is really remarkable. So commend everybody on the committee. I thank our professionals and both the council and the planning board, the full boards, for their cooperation in this. It was a monumental task to get us down from 137 to, I'll say, 20, and afford losing our woods, losing some of our wildlife, losing a lot of acreage here in the borough just for builder's greed, I'll say. So that's all I need to say. Thank you.
I would just like to add that I don't think most people know that this is the fair share plan, okay? This is what Liz put together. And with the help of our other professionals, Ed Buzak, who is not here, an inordinate amount of time and effort went into this. And Liz, I thank you so much. I mean, it's just amazing, and it was just such a huge job. And I don't think most people realize what a job it was and how much time you and Ed put into it. I mean, there's just, I don't know how you did it. It was just amazing. And I don't think other towns are as, I know you did this for other towns, but there are a lot of towns that didn't have you and Ed, and how lucky we are that we had you to do this. So, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. McCloskey, thanks for that additional information. Any of the board members have any comments or questions?
Question, if I may?
Sure.
Ms. Laney, again, echoing what the mayor and Ms. McCloskey said, thank you very much for all the work you put into this. You've done the town a great service by doing all this, so really, really appreciate it. I I do just have two clarifying questions if I can, right? Just for the benefit of myself, and maybe some of the public, could you just explain what an overlay zone is? And then what zones in Morris Plains would qualify as overlay zones? Like, for example, could any zone in Morris Plains be an overlay zone? Could a residential zone be an overlay zone? What qualifies as an overlay zone? So maybe just, if you could.
Sure. So overlay zoning has to be placed on it by an adopted ordinance by the governing body. So it can't be, you wake up one day and all of a sudden there's an overlay zone on your, on your property. That can't happen. You would get noticed, there's notice requirements, there's a public hearing, et cetera. So what an overlay zone does is it permits whatever's, zone you're in, you continue to have all of the rights and, all the rights permitted under that zone. And then an overlay says, okay, but if you wanted to pursue this option, and in this case, what we're looking at tonight are, if you wanted to do multifamily housing, or, either that be apartments or townhomes or whatnot, you could do it, and these would be the regulations that apply. Overlay zoning does not, as I said, it does not compel the owner to do it. It is not taking the property from them. It's not, they have, if anything, they have more rights, because they now have whatever's permitted in the underlying zoning plus this other option. There are overlay zones in the community already, not for affordable housing. There's one, the Whitekert property has an overlay zone. People may not realize Stop and Shop actually has an overlay zone on it, that for a hotel. Whitekert property has an overlay zone to do this, commercial office redevelopment. I think that's it. I think those are the only overlays. But it's used, it's providing an opportunity, a realistic opportunity. Which is what the Constitution of New Jersey requires. And so that is what, I hope that answers it.
No, it does, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any restrictions on how much or percentage of overlay, of the town could be an overlay zone? In other words, I'll just say, from a builder's perspective, right, you're basically doubling up on the opportunity for a property, right? So as a builder, I would say, well, it'd be great if the entire town were an overlay, because then I can do whatever I want, right? So are there any restrictions that?
Yeah, I mean, if the town wanted to do that, you could. I would never advise that. But you could.
Right.
I mean, one thing that we should say, and this is something that was a condition of our third round settlement, it's a condition almost in everybody's settlement agreements, which is there is a townwide mandatory set aside. So if somebody comes before us, and the thing is, in Morris Plains, as in a lot of other communities like Morris Plains, most of the town is zoned for single-family residential or commercial. The sites that are zoned for multifamily were specific, one-offs. By that I mean the I call it the M&M development, the Pfizer site, right? That was a builder's remedy, that was a lawsuit, so the zoning for that is just for that site. The other one, Signature Place. Signature Place was used, it was a Matt Cali office building, right? And it was redeveloped to help meet our housing obligation. Sorry, I got off on a tangent. So I guess the point is that, no, you wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to just be like, oh yeah, all over town, you can do this incredible density if you are able to get these sites together. Oh, the reason why I said the mandatory section is because if there's any project that involves 5 or more new housing units, they have to provide 20% of those units as affordable. And but that doesn't give anybody, and the law, the way it's written, that doesn't give anybody the right for a rezoning, it doesn't give anybody the right for the density bonus, but it's just if the board allowed it, you know, if the town actually really allowed it, then they would have to, and it resulted in 5 or more new housing units, they would have to do 20% affordable.
And that's why, and you were part of this, the discussions, Bill, just, you know,
Jason, you have to, sorry.
Bill was part of the discussions about, you know, where should we put these overlay zones? And where's a good spot? And why is it a good, why would another spot be good? Wow, you know, all those things. You know, that took a long time.
Yeah, right. No, I appreciate the explanation. It's very good, and the presentation was great. Just one thing I wanted to clarify in the presentation. So on page 7, you've listed the overlay zone on block 112, lot 2, right? And then on page 12 and page 13, we're listing 2 different blocks and lots. So my question is this a combination of all 3 of these lots now? Is it only the last 2?
No, it's all 3.
It's all 3.
It's all 3.
Okay, so what would be, right, so as you said, it's the teardrop shape on Tabor Road, it's the wooded area, and it's what's currently Sonesta Suites.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And so, and I think the idea was 100 Candle Bay. The problem is, the Sonesta Suites and this property both have the same street address.
Right.
So, the lot 2, which is the vacant property versus, let me just get the right. The no, that's lot 2 as well. I maybe got the wrong lots, but anyway, the vacant property is really, we're putting that overlay zoning in place to meet our RDP. The other properties are to meet the unmet need.
Understood. And so, is the math correct then? Because just my math, not
Okay.
yours. I know yours is correct.
Well, it might not be. Just
No, I know
yeah,
yours is
like-
good. This is-
Bill, it's that voodoo man.
Yeah,
And she does it very, very well. She does the voodoo very well, Mr.
yeah.
So it's the 16 units on the 100 Candlewood, it's the 4 units on 300 Tabor Road, and then is it also the 36 units on that wooded lot as well?
No, this
Okay.
is why it's a little confusing, and, basically, the 36 on that wooded lot would be used to meet the 20.
Used to meet the 20.
The 20 RDP, right?
Right.
So that's kind of like what we should, you know, what we're trying to do over the next 10 years.
Okay,
The unmet need sites include those 2 parcels, plus the 2 bedrooms
Mhm.
from the Leamore Drive.
okay. So when we're looking at this holistically, right,
Mhm.
all 3 of those pieces of those
Mhm.
parcels of land together, and when we're talking about a total amount of, say, building, right,
Mhm.
that could be done, right, to the mayor's point, right, it's, the affordable housing is only 20% of what the total could be. Do we know what that total number could be across all 3 of these properties? Potentially. Not that anybody's gonna do it, but
Yeah.
just potentially.
Yeah, yes, I have to do the math quickly.
Or could you tell us what is the total number of affordable units across all 3 of these?
Across all 3 would be 27.
27, okay. And then if we did quick math, it's basically multiplying that by 5.
That's a good idea.
Like
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
Like 130.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, right? That's a quick math, I appreciate it. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, in that overlay area, potentially, right? By the law, we have to allow for the potential for this to happen, but none of what we're doing here, or what the council is doing, is actually building anything. We're just allowing for the potential.
We are not, we're providing the incentive.
There you
Yeah.
go. Okay.
But you gotta understand, I don't want you to confuse people, it could be that 131, or it could somebody can just come in and say, oh, I wanna build the affordable.
So just move.
Or the borough can say, oh, but we can just build the affordable, if you wanted to, so it's not necessarily that 131, it could just be affordable units.
Right, but the total maximum
Yeah.
capability or potential is that 137.
Correct,
Right.
correct. And again, and I can't stress this enough, it could also, in 10 years' time, we could be like a Stella
Of course.
Hotel. You know,
Because as you said,
Yeah,
it's been going on since the early 80s, so.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Thank you, that's all the questions I had.
one more thing. Sorry. But I just want everyone to know that by doing all of this and adopting these resolutions that provide for the ordinances and the master plan, this, and having the judge and everyone approve it, this protects us from having a builder's remedy suit.
That's correct, and I should have said that.
Yeah.
Because Morris Plains actually has had builder's remedy lawsuits that were successful for the developer. And among them being the Pfizer property on Tabor Road, which is gonna be, 423 units all total, with whatever percent set aside, 70-something units of affordable. And then there's also the American Road was part of a lawsuit that, again, is part of sort of they tacked on late to the builder's remedy. And when you don't have a court approving your plan, you're very susceptible to somebody coming in and saying, I wanna build 500 units of housing here, and, you don't have a compliant plan, and it's a hard thing to defend in front of the court, so, So having a compliant plan is preferable, yeah.
Ms. Legge, I have a question also. I'm a little confused, I need some clarification. We have an obligation to provide 106 affordable units, correct?
Not really. I'm sorry, I know it's not, go
Well,
ahead.
I know,
Well, not to provide the 106, to allow, and it's not even that, that's the number, and we have to have a reasonable probability,
Okay.
reasonable expectation that it might, but that's only a portion of the number, that's what you went over, only a portion. We don't have to provide 106, nor do we have to.
We have to provide the potential for 106.
For the portion of it, that's the whole.
Yeah,
For a
so,
portion of it.
right,
So what happens to the difference? So really, our obligation is not 106.
That's correct.
Correct, yeah, no, it's because, this is again, and you're bringing logic to this, so.
No, I'm just trying to understand where the
No.
remainder goes, that's all.
No,
They come up with, there is, looking at the need for affordable housing and the green space in towns, they come up with a number.
Mhm.
It was 132 or 106, we got 106. But that gets modified by what is actually possible, what can be done.
Right.
That's the delta between 106 and the numbers that you heard.
So it's based on our limitations in
That's right.
terms of available land that could be developed and.
That's a pretty good description, yes.
Yeah.
There's some,
Okay.
that's the
Because I think
big
it's-
logic that allows you to go from 106 down to what is actually
Right,
being done.
so,
And again,
yeah,
it's
the
not being
confusing
done.
thing is the word obligation, really.
yeah,
That number is really looking at Morris Plains and saying, okay, you should provide 106, but really we don't have the potential to do that. So what the remainder is the fact that we don't have the potential to do 106. Okay.
And our job is to just zone for what we're required, right? And that's the 20,
Which helps us protect the town from
high
lawsuits, high
density,
density,
lawsuits.
yeah.
And the other thing that I wasn't sure of, and I asked this of Liz, was, so that, let's say, we're talking the teardrop property there on Route 53 and Tabor Road. If somebody comes in and develops that as a, let's say, a Wawa or whatever, it's okay with us. We don't have to do anything about that. It doesn't change our obligation. We provided the opportunity.
Right.
So, yeah.
Is that, so our obligation doesn't change until the next round, 2035, is that how that works?
yes, we won't have to go through this whole process of, bartering and arguing for, knock on wood 10 years.
As our development potential changes, this stays the same.
Yes, yes. Let me just, to full disclosure, let's say somebody came in and said, I have accumulated 5 acres, I don't know, somewhere in the town, I don't know where, but 5 acres. And they came and said, we wanna do affordable housing, we're gonna sue you because you're a vacant land adjustment town. It would be litigated, but that's where things, and there's language in our settlement agreement about changed circumstance. It would lead to litigation, but we might have to, deal with that. If somebody came forward with a property and we weren't that happy with it, and it would potentially be litigation. Sorry, that was a very,
So you're asking
Yeah.
very logical questions
Yeah.
to a very unlogical law that our
Yeah.
very unlogical legislators wrote.
It'll only come up if somebody finds 5 acres that we don't know about. So-
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, or,
In the cloud.
cool, thank you. Board have any other questions? Okay, how about the public?
I have a question. Joanne Dugan, 31 Campfield.
Just in case you make a statement, I'm gonna swear you in, because everybody, just in
Oh,
case you
okay.
have sense.
So I stand.
Please state your name, spell your last.
Joanne Dugan, Dugan.
Put up. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give this evening before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I just really have a question. So this whole thing came down to the fact that we have to have the potential to build these 20 units. So you must be so frustrated.
You have no idea, Julie.
Because it's like, you go through all this and you don't even have to build these things. I thought this was like something that was mandated that we had to build, or that had to be built.
Our mandate is to zone for what.
Right, so if
That's it,
if
period.
Candlewood, whatever those properties were, decide they don't wanna build anything there, or they wanna build something else, then,
It's not even their obligation to build
Right.
anything.
I could give you a real
That's
quick
insane.
summary. What happened back in the 1970s is that the Supreme Court decided down in Mount Laurel that there was zoning in place that was designed because of the huge lot size minimums to keep out minorities. That was the decision. And they said, the decision was you can't do that. You have to allow for the possibility of rich people, middle-class people, and poor people, and people of all income classes to be able to live and work and, and so you have to have some. They didn't say you have to build it. It said it has to be the potential that it could happen for the market forces to do it. And that is, and so that for the last 50 years, the state of New Jersey has fought about what that has been. That's, when she talked about the adjustments, there used to be adjustments where you could pay another town to do it.
right.
That those went away. There used to be credits for this and that, and those went away, so there's a constantly changing thing that we'll have to deal with, or somebody will have to deal with again in 10 years, but yeah, not that you build, but it has to be a possibility that will happen.
so like, just an example on Morris Plains.
It's mind-boggling
No,
to me.
so for example, again, I call it the M&M that's on Tabor Road.
Mhm.
The project hasn't been built, the main apartment building.
Right.
But it's zoned for it, and that it still has the realistic potential. So we didn't get that counted against us that hadn't been built. Sorry, I know
Yeah,
that
no,
I'm
you
not.
lost
making
me a little
sense.
bit.
I know, I lost myself, but because.
That's the new one that is
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah,
built in the
yeah.
spring.
But that's to satisfy an obligation for our third round, and it's not even built yet.
And it's not built yet, but the court accepted that, hey, we zoned for it, they've been before us for
Yeah.
site plan and so forth, and so it's still a realistic
Okay,
project. So that's the whole, I guess, my.
yeah,
whole
that was
point
gonna
of
be my
it.
next question, like those units that are going in there, that doesn't count toward this.
No.
It counted towards our earlier
Okay.
rounds, but it's
Okay.
not counting towards this.
Okay, got it.
So American Road and Route 53 were just two of those are the larger ones that
Mhm.
credit us for the third round, and we're currently in the fourth round.
Okay. Wow. So all this money spent by everyone for literally nothing, really?
Well, Liz loves it, so.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
you know what I'm saying, though.
And I bought a beach
Somebody
last
better
night.
do
Yeah, I did,
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I know.
Okay,
I
thank you,
I get it.
very helpful.
Anyone else from the public?
I have a question, but I don't want to take away from anyone else's.
No.
May I come up a second time?
Yep.
So,
That one's like, I just wanted, please raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last.
Lee Connor, Connor.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give this evening before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. So, always looking for my simple explanation. The potential, of course, all our properties is 27 affordable units. Times 5 is the potential of 135 additional units. There is a chance that none of this will be built, potentially. All of it could be built, but it depends on what builders want to do in our lovely town. I just want to
Property
confirm
owners.
that.
No, not the property owners, not even, you know, if a builder approaches somebody, the property owners aren't mandated to do anything. They don't have to build it, they don't have to.
Correct, but don't they give the builders, yeah, come on in and do this?
You're
Right, right.
right. You're absolutely right. It depends on the people that would control those properties, either build it or own it, they would have to want to decide to do this.
And we just don't know.
They might
We
not.
just have no way.
They might have a better way, something better to do with the property.
Thank you.
Okay, each of the board members have this resolution in front of them, so at this time I'll ask Mr. Brewer to read the resolution.
Planning Board Resolution 26-06, resolution adopting amended housing element and fair share plan and amending master plan for the Borough of Morris Plains. Whereas NJSA 40:55D-28 authorizes the planning board to prepare and, after a public hearing, adopt or amend the master plan or components thereof to guide the use of lands within the municipality in a manner that protects public health and safety and promotes the public welfare. And whereas the Borough of Morris Plains Planning Board conducted a public hearing on March 3rd, 2026, to consider the adoption of the amended housing element and fair share plan of March 2026, entitled Borough of Morris Plains, New Jersey Housing Element and Fair Share Plan, 4th Round 2025-2035, and prepared by Elizabeth C. Lahaney, PP, Housing Element, and whereas a notice of said public hearing was duly published in the official newspaper and written notices were served as required by the provisions of NJSA 40:55D-13, and whereas at said public hearing, the aforesaid document was presented to the public, and members of the public were given an opportunity to be heard, and whereas the board finds that the housing element is consistent with the physical, economic, and social development of the Borough of Morris Plains, and the purpose of the municipal land use law as stated in NJSA 40:55-2, now therefore be it resolved by the Land Use Board of the Borough of Morris Plains, Planning Board of the Borough of Morris Plains in the County of Morris in the state of New Jersey on this 3rd day of March 2026 as follows. The board hereby amends the Borough of Morris Plains Master Plan and adopts the housing element in the form considered by the board and attached hereto, and the Planning Board Secretary is directed to record this date, March 3rd, 2026, as the date of its adoption. 2. The Planning Board Secretary is authorized and directed to provide notice of this action in accordance with NJSA 40:55D-13. 3, the Planning Board Secretary is hereby directed to forward a copy of the housing element of March 2026, together with a copy of this resolution to the Office of Planning Advocacy and to the Morris County Planning Board as required by law. 4, this resolution shall take effect as provided by law.
Okay, so at this time, can I get a motion to adopt resolution 26-06, which is for the revised housing plan and fair share plan that is currently in our master plan?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded?
So
Okay.
that Mr. Yes,
Karen, roll call?
okay. Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Melchior,
Yes.
Mr. Bezel,
Yes.
Mrs. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Cianciano,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey,
Yes.
and Mr. Gavaglia.
Yes. So at this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Ms. Laney to give an overview on the ordinances.
Okay, so the ordinances, that you have before you, they're under consideration for the council, I believe it's this Thursday night. And basically, they're two ordinances. The first is the affordable housing ordinance. So this is something that we have on our books now, but the state, in their like infinite wisdom of everything happening all at one time, they updated their housing, there's something called UHAC, which is the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls. And that is the minutia of affordable housing. That is, okay, you need to have this many 2 bedrooms, this many 3 bedrooms. you need to have, okay, the things that are on the ground floor, they need to be accessible to, ADA people. You have to make sure that 50% of the people are making less than this amount of income. It's the real minutia, but it's the sort of where the rubber hits the road. So anyway, UHAC was amended, it was done by NJHMFA, the Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency, December 15th of 2025. So, while everybody is sort of madly trying to get their things in place and, their settlement agreements, et cetera, we had to, and this is a condition of our mediation agreement, and also I believe it's in the court orders, we had to update our affordable housing ordinance to reflect the new UHAC. So essentially, and this is something Ed Buzak finds very irritating, and I agree with him, we're taking a state law and kind of like repeating it in the local ordinance. And it's basically, everything in this ordinance is something that is mandated on the state level, and we're required to adopt an ordinance locally, basically indicating we're doing what the state has asked. The thing about the ordinance that's in front of you, I should just say, is that it was a model ordinance that was prepared by the New Jersey Affordable Housing Professionals, and it was okayed by Fair Share Housing Center. So our sense is that when this gets submitted, because hopefully it will get adopted on Thursday, that when it's submitted to the court, that it will be kind of just a breeze, because it was the model ordinance that, that we adapted to Morris Plains. Anytime it said municipality, we changed it to borough or something. But it was essentially just a model. So that's ordinance number 3-2026. Ordinance number 4-2026 has to do with, these are the overlay zones that we've talked about. And this is the zoning that essentially allows for that realistic opportunity on those 3 sites that we discussed, and at the densities that are in the mediation agreement and the amended housing plan. So obviously, the content, you can ask me any questions about the contents, but the actual sort of nuts and bolts will be discussed, I think, more on Thursday night in front of the council. But you can ask me anything, feel free to ask me any specific questions now. But what we're looking to do tonight is to make a recommendation to the council that these ordinances are, and I think we could say it's not even not inconsistent, they're consistent with the housing plan. And partly they're consistent with the housing plan because they're in the housing plan. These drafts of these ordinances are in the housing plan. So it's, master plan consistency, the housing plan is an element of our master plan. So certainly they're consistent in that regard. And I think they're also consistent with some of the overall goals of our, our general master plan last updated in 2018. So anyway, I'll answer any questions. But essentially my recommendation to the board is that you find these consistent with the master plan. And then, of course, you would vote on that, if you agree with me, and make that recommendation to the governing body.
Very good. Does the board have any questions? Oh. No, go.
Okay. Liz, just general knowledge question.
Sure.
So, if it was in here, I missed it. When someone qualifies for the, whatever the low income. Oh, sorry, Karen. When someone qualifies for the housing, their income levels are only checked upon entry into the, that's correct, right? That's the way
I
this
have to
works?
say, okay, this is a question that has come up recently to me. I don't know. I think you may be right. There are what we have, and we have some in Morris Plains. We have they're called administrative agents who actually do that, who actually do, look at people's tax returns or whatever to make sure that they're eligible. I don't know if those particular, some of them may have policies in place that, oh, we have to review this every 5 years or something, but I don't know
But
that.
they don't.
They don't,
But the
okay.
borough is not involved with any
Yeah.
of that.
I was just saying, it's a general information,
Yeah, yeah.
knowledge, 'cause that was my understanding as well, that there's no like additional income verification that probably happens after, okay. The second one is, so in the ordinance where we're talking about affirmative marketing strategies, I don't know what page this is, but it's before J. When it talks about affirmative marketing plan and it mentions some of the community and regional organizations, one of the things it doesn't mention, it doesn't talk about veterans, and I don't know if veterans are included in that, and if that is something that, you know, veterans organization should be called out in there, or?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and you certainly can, and I think we do.
We did an ordinance for veterans to get, right first refusal or whatever, something like that.
Okay, because it's not in this.
The borough's done an ordinance for that.
Okay.
But the affirmative marketing, and again, this is, affirmative marketing just is, it's a, I guess a term of art, but it's basically how, when units come online, how they get, marketed to the region to get people who are in need of housing, how they find out about it. And as part of our mediation agreement, Fair Share Housing Center lists whatever those organizations are in there, you know, it's like themselves, I think, is one, you know, the Housing Resource Center, there's probably the NAACP of, I'm not sure where, but, you know, and there's different, organizations, and so we have to make sure that those organizations that are listed in our settlement agreement are in there.
Okay. That's it for me.
Any additional questions? Okay, at this time I'll ask Mr. Brewer to read resolution 2607.
Okay. Planning Board Resolution number 26-07, resolution pursuant to municipal land use law on referral of the ordinance amending the land development ordinance adopted on first reading. Whereas the governing body of the Borough of Morris Plains has adopted ordinance number 3-2026 on first reading, and whereas ordinance number 3-2026 is entitled, an ordinance of the Borough of Morris Plains amending Chapter 13, Land Development, repealing and replacing Chapter 13, Article 5, subsection 13, Affordable Housing Ordinance of the Code of the Borough of Morris Plains, New Jersey. Whereas the governing body of the Borough of Morris Plains has referred ordinance number 3-2026 to the planning board pursuant to the provisions of NJSA 40:55D-26 concerning consistency with the Morris Plains Master Plan and such other matters as the planning board may recommend as it deems appropriate in connection with the said ordinance. Now therefore be it resolved by the planning board of the Borough of Morris Plains in the county of Morris and state of New Jersey on the third day of March 2026 as follows. 1, following a review of ordinance number 3-2026 and comments of the borough planner, at the meeting dated March 3rd, 2026, the planning board finds and determines that the said ordinance is not inconsistent with the master plan. 2, the board has no other comments or recommendations otherwise as to the ordinance. 3, this resolution shall constitute the report of the planning board pursuant to the municipal land use law, and the board secretary is directed to deliver a certified copy hereof to the borough clerk within 5 days of the date hereof. 4, this resolution shall take effect as provided by law.
Okay, can I have a motion to agree that ordinance 3-2026 is consistent with our master plan, which allows it to go back to council for second read?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, Karen?
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Valpier?
Yes.
Mr. Bezel?
Yes.
Mrs. Steppert?
Yes.
Mr. Stanziata?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
And Michael Gravaglia.
Yes.
Now, if I got that correct, it was Mayor Carr and Bezel, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Brewer to read resolution 26-08.
Planning Board Resolution 26-08, 08, resolution pursuant to municipal land use law on referral of ordinance amending the land development ordinance adopted on first reading. Whereas the governing body of the Borough of Morris Plains has adopted ordinance number 4-2026 on first reading. And whereas ordinance number 4-2026 is entitled, an ordinance to provide for the partial amendment, supplementation, and revision of Chapter 13, Borough of Morris Plains Land Development Ordinance, to establish affordable housing overlay zones in the Borough of Morris Plains. Whereas the governing body of the Borough of Morris Plains has referred ordinance number 4-2026 to the planning board pursuant to the provisions of NJSA 40:55D-26 concerning consistency with the Morris Plains Master Plan and such other matters as the planning board may recommend as it deems appropriate in connection with the said ordinance. Now therefore be it resolved by the planning board of the Borough of Morris Plains in the County of Morris and the State of New Jersey on the 3rd day of March 2026 as follows. 1. Following a review of ordinance number 4-2026 and comments of the Borough Planner at the meeting dated March 3, 2026, the Planning Board finds and determines that the said ordinance is not inconsistent with the master plan. 2. The board has no other comments or recommendations otherwise as to the ordinance. 3. This resolution shall constitute the report of the planning board pursuant to the municipal land use law, and the board secretary is directed to deliver a certified copy hereof to the borough clerk within 5 days of the date hereof. 4. This resolution shall take effect as provided by law.
Okay, can I have a motion to agree that ordinance 4-2026 is consistent with the master plan, which again allows it to go back to the council for a second read?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, Karen?
Okay. Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Napier?
Yes.
Mr. Bezel?
Yes.
Mrs. Decker?
Yes.
Excuse me? Yes? Mr. Fianchetto?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Ms. McCluskey?
Yes.
And Mr. Gabaglia?
Yes. Okay, that concludes our meeting tonight.
No, I have something to bring up.
Oh, you do?
Mr. Chairman, you were not here at our last meeting, but at our last meeting, we had some discussion about the checklists. And there has been some input that we felt maybe hadn't been discussed. So the board decided that we would like to discuss those things and have a, thank you, Russ, and have an opportunity to discuss them. And we said at a regular meeting, not tonight, we would have an opportunity to do that. So I just want to make sure that even if we don't have an application for our March meeting, that we have that opportunity for all the board members to discuss the changes that have been proposed to the checklist and the changes that have been not included in the checklist that we had suggested.
So were there any changes?
Yeah, there were a lot of
discussed?
changes.
No, I know that, but at the February meeting, were there?
No, we didn't
additional-
discuss
So
the
it was the
changes.
changes that we had talked about prior?
We're gonna have a work session.
I think the request she's making is just to put it on the agenda that we discuss at the next meeting, the checklist. So that's what she's requesting, I believe.
Okay, we can do that. You're prepared to do that from the committee. Okay, sure, we can do that. I'll do
Okay.
that.
So even though there won't be, or they might not be, I guess it's too late for an application to come in now, but
Yeah, it'll
even
just
though
be the two
there isn't an
resolutions from
application,
last-
we will be
Right.
doing that.
We'll have
Sure.
memorialization of resolutions with two
Right.
applications.
So we'll do that. We'll do that in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay? Everyone go with that? All right. Okay, so our next scheduled planning board meeting will be March 16th, which is the normal schedule, right here in the council chambers. Can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
John, your meeting was much shorter, I don't know. I have to bring you in, I think.
I heard 11:30.
It's all in the get out.
That's right, John.
Clean copy of the presentation. Yeah, I made notes all over mine.